Javier Farje is a historian and journalist specializing in Latin America, and he was an observer for the 2017 Venezuelan local elections. He's joining us live from London. Great to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So the National Electoral Council didn't release the tallies from each of the, I believe it's 30,000 polling booths nationwide. They have promised to do so in the coming hours. Does that hamper the ability to verify results?
Well, in the past, and you mentioned that I was an observer in 2017, which is correct, the count was announced very quickly because they have an electronic system which enables the Electoral Commission to issue early results. The fact that they took such a long time means that there have been some problems there. President Maduro has denounced there's been hacked. Again, he hasn't provided any evidence that is the case. So we wonder whether there's been some kind of coordination to make the announcement long after the closing of the polling stations. Now, the problem is that the Commission has always been seen as close to the government, which is correct. There's been, in 2017, the opposition accepted its defeat. There were regional elections. Venezuela is a federal country, so there were elections for governors. I was the observer in one of the states, and the process went smoothly, and the opposition governor, who actually lost that election to the Chavista, admitted and recognized his defeat.
Yeah, whereas
and the
this time the opposition have come out absolutely fighting, saying that they're saying the whole world knows who won. You're talking about the delay in the results being announced. We know that there were some independent verifiers in Venezuela, were they not? Have they had sufficient access to do their jobs?
No, they haven't. That is the problem. First of all, the Electoral Commission, the government banned the European Union observer team to join the other observers. That's a good thing. That's a bad thing for the government because they were independent. I know personally some of the observers that came from the UK to Venezuela. They were all supporters of the government. So in that respect, many of the observers at the moment in Venezuela, international observers, are people who are close to the government or support the government, and they will accept Maduro's presidency, Maduro's victory. So that's one thing. Also, the opposition has denounced that delegates from parties in Venezuela, every party has the right to have a delegate by the electoral the polling station. I saw them, during the 2017 election. The opposition says that they were not allowed to get in, to be able to monitor how the vote was being conducted. They are complaining that this was the case. But also, they are complaining that the amount of votes that they have confirms the tendency that Mr. González has won by 70%. Again, neither the government nor the opposition have shown concrete evidence about why they are coming up with those figures. But the high turnout in Venezuela should have meant that the opposition had a good chance to win. Why? Because in the past, the opposition would either boycott the election because they didn't think they would be transparent, or people wouldn't come out to vote because they would know that the result is a foregone conclusion. This time, there was a massive, as your reporter said, in Colombia. I was talking to people in Venezuela. There were people who were queuing at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, sleeping on the street to make sure that they would vote against Maduro. So the high turnout should have benefited the opposition. And it turns out, according to the Electoral Commission, that has not been the case. And that's why there are many doubts. By the way, Colombia was mentioned. The Foreign Minister, Luis Gilberto Murillo from Colombia, has just said not long ago that he wants an independent audit of the votes.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting because as we've been hearing from our correspondent throughout the day, what Colombia says is noteworthy because Colombia also has a left-wing government, in fact, the first in its history. But Maduro has said after the results were announced that no one can interfere in Venezuela's affairs. So how susceptible is he to any pressure or scrutiny from outside the country?
Well, especially when it comes from left-wing governments. I mean, Gabriel Boric, the president of Chile, as you mentioned, as it was mentioned earlier in this report, refused to accept the result. And the response of the government was quite aggressive, saying, well, in Venezuela, we actually defeated fascism, unlike other countries, with votes, which is a bit of an overstatement because the opposition in Venezuela is not fascist. So the reaction from the Venezuelan government to Mr. Boric's statement about not accepting and calling the government of Venezuela a regime, which is a name that is used for authoritarian governments, it's symptomatic of how the Venezuelan government is very touchy about how alleged allies of the government react to this. Also, we have to wait about Lula da Silva's, the president of Brazil's reaction. He was very critical of President Maduro when President Maduro said that there would be a bloodbath and civil war, quote unquote, if he didn't win. Lula said it was very irresponsible. So it would be very important to know how the Brazilian government is going to react. We haven't heard anything
we'll be watching for that reaction very closely. Javier Farje, thank you very much for your analysis.
My pleasure.